Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Bayar's Educational Talk series. This topic today, we will be discussing fire and life safety at home. It's hosted by Jordan Young, who is our guest speaker for today. Jordan is a physiotherapist as well as an active professional firefighter. So a little bit about Jordan is Jordan has over 7 years of experience working as a physiotherapist, specializing in neurological rehabilitation. Throughout his career, he has had the privilege of helping individuals regain mobility and improve their quality of life after neurological injuries. Alongside being a physiotherapist, he is also an active professional firefighter, committed to serving his community in both emergency response and in public education about safety. These two roles have allowed Jordan to develop a diverse skill set and a passion for serving the community. A few things we will be covering today are the importance of working smoke and CO alarms, fire escape and emergency planning, injury prevention at home, and then just to close out the talk for today, we will leave time for a question and answer period. So I'd like to welcome Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for that introduction. And as mentioned, yes, I'm a firefighter actively, and I also still am an active physiotherapist, even though I do that part-time due to the hours I work and such. And I'm happy to give this presentation for the second time, and hopefully it's something to remind anyone who's seen it before, and also learn a lot if it's the first time you're seeing this. When it comes to fire and life safety at home, I wouldn't say it changes too much. So luckily, most of the things that I talked about last year will be a refresher. In fact, I kind of want to talk about some of those things a little bit more quickly to allow for any questions or discussion at the end. Because I know everyone's situation is different and some people might have burning questions. Alrighty, so to get started here, I want to talk about first the smoke and CO alarms, and that means what they are, their maintenance required, the importance of them, and after that it could be fire and escape and emergency planning. So that is what to do to prepare yourself to avoid situations that you might be stuck in a fire or any hazardous situation. And lastly, if you do find yourself in a hazardous situation like a fire, what you do. Okay, so before I talk about this, I have a video. It's about Dan the Doofus, and he wants to learn more information about how to set up his smoke and CO alarm. So let me prepare that for you right away here. If the volume does not work, let me know.
Hey Dan, having a party I see. Whose birthday is it? Is that a smoke alarm in the bird cage? It looks worn out. How old is that smoke alarm? Dan, that's too old for a smoke alarm. Smoke alarms need to be replaced every 10 years. Say, Dan, why is it in that bird cage? Dan, a chirping smoke alarm needs a new battery. The smoke alarm belongs on the ceiling or high up on the wall. And that one is far too old. You need a new smoke alarm. Do you have enough smoke alarms in your home? How many do you have? Dan, that's not enough. You need a smoke alarm inside each bedroom, outside each sleeping area, and on every level of your home. Dan? Are your smoke alarms working? You need to test your smoke alarms every month. Push the test button to see if it's working. Good job, Dan. You have working smoke alarms in your home. Working smoke alarms save lives. Make sure your home has enough working smoke alarms.
All right, that was a small video that kind of highlighted the points of working smoke alarms and their maintenance and how we're supposed to test them out. Let me actually share my screen here so you guys can see where I'm at. Still see it? Thumbs up? Okay. It's easy to make fun of Dan the doofus there, but really most of us are in that situation. Last year, for the department I worked at, the chief instilled a fire and life safety program for us to go out into the community and to make sure homes had working smoke alarms and CO alarms. And that was quite eye-opening because most people did not. I would say very few houses and homes had working smoke alarms, working CO alarms, and there's always kind of a small excuse that someone would have of why it didn't get working, but really they just didn't really know what to do. It could be batteries that are not working and they couldn't reach it. It might have been chirping and they got annoyed with it. They unplugged it. Some of them were just defective and didn't know how to replace it, right? So there's just lots of reasons why people might not be maintaining their homes, but it is ultimately your safety and your responsibility to do so. Kind of the more important parts of that is, yes, every level of your home should have a smoke alarm on it. Now, this is, I would say, the bare minimum, depending on the home you have. If you live in a more modern home, I think it's even 2014 and newer, you have to have a smoke alarm in each room that someone sleeps in, as well as it has to be strobe lit, and it gets all fancy and complicated with people's homes, and as annoying as it is, they all need to be made sure they're being maintained, right? It is also the law. So if it's the safety is not the concern, then you should be that concerned with if you ever get inspected or someone comes in, that needs to be done. Okay, so every smoke alarm, I would say, has at least the expiry date of 10 years. So that means 10 years after they are manufactured. Who knows when you bought it, but when it's manufactured, it needs to be replaced, right? It always doesn't always say on the alarm when it's expired, but it will always show the date of manufacture. So you can see on this picture right here in the top right, it says September 10th, I believe, 2010. That is usually the bare minimum. And you can only see that once you take your smoke alarm down. So a good tip, if you do put up a smoke alarm, have it written in like a Sharpie marker on the outside or somewhere in big writing of when it expires, because unless you put it in your calendar of when this thing expires in the next 10 years, which I've never seen anyone do before, it's good to write it somewhere in plain sight, otherwise you will forget. And maybe 15 years later, there's something wrong with it, it's malfunctioning, and that's probably the reason why it's expired. But every month, these need to be tested. There is a button on the front, and that is what you use to make sure it's working. It'll probably have some alarms and beeps going after you press it, but that usually means that it's working, right? That needs to be done every month. Batteries needs to be replaced every single year, and that is if it has a battery. There are so many different types of smoke alarms nowadays that it gets pretty confusing as to how to operate each individual one, even for myself, because there's so many brands and models. But generally, they take 9-volt batteries. That's like the rectangular ones. And when it comes to your birthday, New Year's, just pick an annual event, and I would make it a reminder to change all the batteries in the smoke alarms you have. Nowadays, if you have newer models, ones that are plugged in, so ones that are not just battery powered, those ones may or may not have removable batteries in them. If they do, it's probably a 9-volt in which you could replace them, but some of them have internal lithium ion batteries that there is no way to replace them or take them out. It just expires, and that kind of reminds people that after 10 years you have to get rid of it because it'll just stop working on you. So if you have a smoke alarm and you have no idea how to get in because you can't get to the battery, that's probably the reason why. It's a built-in lithium ion battery that is not removable, and after 10 years the whole unit will expire and you need to replace it. All right, carbon monoxide. So this is more or less the same in terms of maintenance when it comes to smoke alarms, for the most part, that you still have to test them every month, you have to replace the batteries every year, and that they expire every 10 years, generally speaking. The difference is that carbon monoxide, its placement is different. So it just needs to be in front of any area in which someone sleeps. And I want to kind of emphasize that too, because if you have any gas appliances or water heater, people think, like especially if it's in the basement, most people think that the best position for a CO alarm would be down there, right beside that gas appliance, in which, yes, it'll catch it. If there is CO being emitted for whatever reason in the basement, it'll pick it up pretty quickly. However, if it's at nighttime and you're sleeping, you won't hear the alarm, right? Even if it's going off. So the most important thing is to have it in front of the sleeping areas, because as it says in the top, carbon monoxide can't be seen, smelled, or tasted, which makes it in many ways more dangerous than smoke or fire. Even if you're sleeping, smoke or fire will wake you up pretty quickly, right? But if you're sleeping and there's CO in the home, there's probably no chance for you if you don't have a working CO alarm. So the position of it doesn't matter whether it's on the ceiling or low towards the ground. Carbon monoxide in itself is more or less the same weight as air, so it will be picked up regardless, which is different from smoke alarms, which need to be mounted fairly close to the ceiling, high up on the wall or right on the ceiling, because that's where smoke travels. All right, so that is the CO and smoke alarm spiel that I have. It is a very important thing. I have a video to show you next when it comes to fire escape and emergency planning. I want to start with a video. It is a little bit of a shocking, depressing video because it's based on a real story, and those who've seen this last year will, I'm sure, remember it already. That it has to do with a family of 4, 2 parents, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. It's a semi-detached home in which their home caught fire, and unfortunately one of those children actually passed away. And as tragic as that is, it does call for a wake-up call to anyone else, right? That this could have been prevented through a few ways. And it also shows the importance of planning for an emergency like this ahead of time. Okay, I did say that it's a semi-detached home, meaning the home beside it was relatively unaffected, and so a fire department actually used that unaffected home to recreate the fire environments of that family endured, to create a learning experience out of it. So let me set this up for you and I can share it. Hopefully everyone can see this video here and that the volume works. If not, just give me a thumbs down if you can't hear anything.
Seeing now is the alcove area in the living room of the simulation home. The kitchen is on the right side of the frame and the front door is on the left. A fire is being ignited on the wicker chair, which was determined to be the point of origin of the fire. The equipment hanging from the ceiling are the heat sensors installed to monitor the temperature of the room at various levels. The smoke is now pouring from the ignition point and a small flame is developing. The wicker chair is now burning. The ground floor smoke alarm activates. Remember, there was no ground floor smoke alarm in the actual fire. The fire is still in its early stages, but you can see that the toxic smoke layers are already beginning to accumulate at the ceiling level. If the occupants were alerted to the fire at this point, they would have had more time to safely escape. In a fire, every second counts. There is no time to spare. The smoke alarm on the second floor now activates. This is the alarm the family heard. At this stage, they are getting out of bed, gathering their children, and preparing to escape. These are the fire conditions that the family would have faced as they came down the stairs. At this point, the temperature in the room at the shoulder level is approximately 40 degrees Celsius. Watch closely what happens to the fire conditions when the front door opens and more oxygen is introduced into the room. At this stage, we believe the mother and 3-year-old are now exiting the front door. In the confusion of the growing fire, the father and older boy became separated and the father barely escaped with his life. Unfortunately, the child had run back up the stairs and perished in the fire. Within 30 seconds of the door opening, the temperature on the first and second floors soared to over 700 degrees Celsius. The fire is spreading rapidly throughout the room as flaming paint is dropping onto the furnishings. The room is rapidly approaching its peak temperature of 900 degrees Celsius. All of the materials in the room are now burning, and in less than 3 minutes, we have reached flashover conditions. No one can possibly survive these conditions.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it there because I think that's the gist of the video of what actually happened, and then we'll kind of talk about and recap what actually went on during there. So let me bring my slideshow back up. Hopefully you can all see it. Yes, so things I want to bring your attention to is that fire started relatively small. Right? It's an incipient stage. It was in their living room area. Could have been just a candle that got knocked over. Who knows? Could have been someone smoking, right? And then it caught something on fire. Fire generally doubles in size every minute. With oxygen introduced to it, it's probably going to be even faster than that. Within 45 seconds, any smoke alarm would have been picking that up. Unfortunately, that household did not have a working one on the first floor, right? And that's a huge deal because there's a good chance that a working smoke alarm on that first level would have given them enough time to all escape safely, right? It took another 45 seconds, so at the minute 30 mark, for the smoke alarm in the second level to turn on, and that's when the parents were alerted to it and started to attempt to evacuate. The mother took the 3-year-old, was out of there by 30 seconds, which is great response time to be able to leave. One mistake, as mentioned, was the door was left open, right? Anytime you are in a situation where there is fire or smoke, the more doors you close, generally the better. Whether it's behind you, whether you're caught somewhere, close that door and it will prevent the fire from spreading as fast as it does, right? So just after the 2-minute mark, when the father was bringing the 5-year-old down because of the smoke and fire conditions that they were met on the first floor, there's likely that the 5-year-old got frightened and detached from his father and went back upstairs. And unfortunately, that child lost their life while the father just barely made it out. Within 3 minutes, that house was essentially fully on fire. And it was within 3 minutes that the fire department got there, but there was nothing they could do for that house. It was fully involved. So that's how quickly things can happen when it's a fire. And that's why they say no time to spare. But the best thing to do is actually prepare for it ahead of time, because if you're caught in it, if you're not prepared, it's not going to be good for you. It'll be a very bad day. And that's what I want to talk about here when it comes to fire escape emergency planning, is first knowing your building, how to call for help, and if you are caught in a fire, we'll discuss that too. And that's usually the part where I think most people have questions, and we can kind of get more discussion in at that point. Okay. So when it comes to knowing your building, there are many different types of buildings. So information based on what type of building you have is going to be a little bit of a personal matter. You can have a bungalow home. You can have a 2-story home with a basement. You might be in a condo or apartment. Either way, you should know its layout, where the exits are, and what to do in the case of an emergency. Right? In the case of a home and you're a family, if there are multiple individuals, you should discuss with each other where a meeting point when you escape the building, right? If it is a home and you have, whether it's across the street at a particular tree or at a street light, it's important to know where you're going to meet, because as much as it is a crappy situation and you might think you would panic, most adults actually don't panic during these situations. They will usually try to actually help and save any others. If you're a parent, usually they won't leave until they find their children, for example. Or if they're in a concert and something happens, they'll go looking for their friend before they leave the building, right? So having that meeting point helps everyone stay accounted for. And if someone is missing, then you know if someone is indeed missing, or if maybe they really left the house. So discuss that ahead of time, whether it is someone who has mobility needs, whether it's a child or an elderly person, should know how that person is getting out, right? When it comes to a condo or apartment, this is an important one. If you're not on the first floor and you need help getting out, what do you do, right? If the alarm goes off, maybe it's not even far. If the alarm goes off, what happens? Because most condos and buildings, especially newer ones, the elevators stop working. And that's for a reason, so you're not supposed to use them, right? Every apartment or condo has a fire safety plan at the beginning of the building in a box. And in that should have the information on any residents needing assistance getting down, right? But depending on building management and how that happens, every time alarm goes off, I'd be surprised if you get a call, or if someone comes up to your room, right? I don't know, maybe check with your building if you live in something like that, if someone comes and checks on you, if an alarm goes off. I will discuss a little bit later how to kind of call for help if you're found yourself in that situation and you need assistance getting out. But that's a part of planning, right? Knowing where the pull stations are in your building, right? Knowing where the stairs and exits are is important, because if it's a smoky environment, you better know where the nearest stairs is and how to alert the rest of the building to something happening. The pull stations are those like usually red levers that set the alarm off in a building, okay? Calling for help. Usually when you're in an emergency, particularly a fire, I wouldn't recommend calling right away, right? Get yourself out of the dangerous environment before you make that call, right? You don't want to spend time calling 911, getting the information out, and then find yourself trapped because the fire grew. Get out, get on a cell phone, and then call, right? As you know, the number is 911. And the two most important pieces of information is your address, the emergency, right? And your phone number. In case something happens, you get cut off, they're able to get back to you somehow, right? I wrote under here, not emergency line. And this is just a tidbit. If you're not necessarily an emergency, an example I like to give is if you happen to fall and you live alone and there's no one to help you up, and if there is someone to help you up, they might need assistance getting you up. You're not injured per se, you just need help getting off the floor or getting out of the shower. You can call a non-emergency line for the fire department, and they could come help with that, right? It's not a 911. It's going to be changed on every municipality. For the example I gave, which would be a patient lift assist. It depends on whether that's the fire department's jurisdiction or it's the ambulance, but that's just something to know, right? If you have problems with a smoke alarm, you're not sure it's an emergency, you can call 911. But if there's no smoke or no smells or anything like that, no visible flame, call the non-emergency line to get some help. I have that often with people smoke alarms chirping, meaning they have low batteries, but they think, hey, I have small children, I don't know if there's carbon monoxide, it's making noises, I don't know what to do. They'll be able to help you with that. And if you're really unsure, they'll send a truck, and firefighters can help take a look at what the actual issue is, whether it's a malfunction smoke alarm, if there's CO in the house, or whether it's just like a battery issue or a mechanical issue. Okay. What to do in a fire, right? It's really going to depend on what type of home you're in and what type of building you're in. But as a general rule, get low and keep moving, right? That's where the clean air is. That's where it'll be less hot. Close every door behind you. If you exit, close that door. I had a topic someone brought up to me in their condo building where they're usually cooking and the smoke alarm goes off, and they opened their front door to help clear the smoke, and their building got mad at them and asked me, like, why is that not allowed? Why am I not allowed to open my front door to clear out the smoke? Well, the reason that is because if it is, let's say, a fire building, now it's going to spread to the rest of the building, right? And the chance of survival for everyone else becomes more difficult. So that's why you close all the doors, all the windows on your way out. I'm not saying go out of your way throughout the entire building to close every door, but if you go through a door, close it back behind you. If you live in an apartment or any commercial building, they'll have door closers and they'll close on their own. That's why those doors all fire doors have a door closer on them. You don't have to close them. Alert others as you exit. That doesn't mean going door to door and telling everyone that there's an emergency. That means use the pull station that I talked about. There's a picture of it in the slide. Pull it and alert everyone in the building that there's an emergency happening and that you need to leave. And as I said before, you could call 911 once you're safely in a situation, safely out of the emergency situation, right? And if you are not able to escape, you shelter in place. What that means is find a reasonably safe room, right, that doesn't have smoke or fire in it, and close the door behind you. Call 911, let them know where you are and what the situation is, right? Often that is much safer than running out to a very smoky or hot situation during a fire, because without the equipment, it just takes a few gulps of smoke before you're unconscious, right? So it's not a good situation to just try to run through a fire. It's not going to work. Okay. At this point, does anyone have any questions? Because I know I talked about a lot on CO smoke alarms and emergency planning. Does anybody have any questions now we're on this topic of what to do in a fire, or anything else, of course? No, keep going. Alrighty. So I'm gonna breeze the next few next few slides, because I think this is more of a reminder, and it's gonna not necessarily apply to everyone, but they're good tips to do to prevent fire situations, but also injury prevention as well. So in this one, for fire prevention, when it comes to cooking, if you're doing something in the kitchen, stay in the kitchen. if you have anything actually cooking, right? Use a timer if you find you get distracted or you have any memory related issues time to time. Set a timer, don't do it while tired, because it only takes a small pot on fire to take down a building, okay? If you're a smoker, dispose of it correctly. Do not do it in the bedroom. In my city that I work in the fire department, we had several fatal fires last year, and all of them were related to smoking in the bedroom. Now, some of it there is extenuating circumstances, but every single time it has been probably started on a mattress on fire due to someone smoking, right? And that happens very often. It's one of the leading causes of fatal house fires that exist, right? So if you smoke, you already know this, but it's a reminder to dispose of it correctly and do it outside, okay? When it comes to appliances, right, especially space heaters, now that, it's still summer, but when winter comes around, some of us do have it. Make sure there's enough space around it so that it doesn't heat up any flammable surfaces, okay? When it comes to loading up electrical sockets, especially heat appliances, whether it's for hair or whether it's, to heat your home, those are overload sockets very quickly. Any electrical cords, don't place them underneath carpets or anything like that, because it's more likely to catch fire if something malfunctions. Alrighty? This is the physio part of me when it comes to injury prevention and less due to fire. If you have any fall risk or any mobility issues, a lot of this you might already know, but it's a good reminder to keep exercising if falls are a big part of your life, right? The focus is on function and balance related, not necessarily just strengthening our cardio, but this is something that is a life goal, right? And you should never stop doing. Take your time and don't rush when it comes to, let's say, going to the bathroom, or if someone rings your doorbell, getting to the phone, right? Take your time. Keep areas clear. This is a particular issue with homes that are more on the side of hoarding, right? That makes it dangerous for everyone, including me as a first responder. If there is a lot going on in that home, it makes it so much more dangerous, right? And also it's going to increase your risk of not just fires, but also falling, right? If there's a lot of clutter and there's things to trip on. Keep up with your eye exams. If you are finding, especially at night, this is more of an issue when you don't have as much lighting on, right? If you have more falls, make sure you keep up with your eye exams, and change your prescription if you need to. Proper lighting at nighttime, particularly when going to the bathroom. Make sure there's wall lights or anything like that on the way to the bathroom, just so you can see until you have the ability to turn on some proper lighting. Non-slip mats in the bathroom and shower, grab bars, telephone showers, raised toilet seats, those sort of things. As I mentioned before, if you are one of those individuals that do have some balance issues or find yourself falling and you do need help, there's always the option of calling that non-emergency line, especially if you're not injured, to get help where you need to go. Okay, and if you are injured, obviously you go right now to 911. I kind of want to leave it up to here for any questions, because I know some of you had some last time around, and even this time around, I know Lori mentioned you have some things you want to discuss. So if there's any questions about anything I've mentioned or anything related to fire safety, please go ahead.
Before I dive in, does Ellie or Jenny have any questions? Because I don't want to take up all the time. I know I learned
Go
from
for it.
I learned from Jenny about the because I had an issue, I think 2 years ago, and I was so thankful to Jenny because I had a pot go on fire, like burn, and my alarm, thank goodness, because I was out of my kitchen. I put the element off, or didn't turn the element off, and so my alarm is yelling fire, fire, fire. And it took a minute because what is a strange voice in my phone? I live by myself and voice. And then I looked down the hall and I saw smoke, and I was mortified. I was upset, mortified. Had a fire, I think it was archery, Jenny, and I almost didn't go because I felt I didn't deserve to go because I almost set my place on fire, and I went anyway. And it was Jenny who shared with me about having to get a stove that automatically turns off for exactly that reason. I didn't even know that that existed. So I was, grateful for Jenny to, not that she had that experience, but that she was able to share that with me. So then I felt glad about going and not beating myself up quite so much, and knowing that there's a product out there that can help us, right? So anyway, tribute to Jenny.
Lori, for yourself, are you using that currently? Did you change over to that type of stove that turns off automatically at a certain temperature and detects fire?
So I ended up not. I think I stopped cooking instead, and but I now have an induction pan. And I wanted to ask about that. Does that cause less fires, induction? Um,
Statistically, I'm not sure. Versus like you're talking about, you had gas before.
I had
Okay.
electric, but I
Oh, you had
have,
electrical. Okay.
but I have taped off my stove. I've turned it into clearly I don't cook much, and so I've turned my stove into a coffee station, stovetop, and then I've taped it off so that the buttons don't get turned on, uh,
Gotcha.
by bumping it or whatever. And I now have an induction, just an induction plate, and then every time I use the induction plate, I unplug it when I'm finished.
Good. Yeah.
So,
And
Lori,
Yeah.
I've had my CDI for a while. In an induction cooktop, like I have one that I take to hotels to cook for my son, right? And I have, unfortunately, hot dogs, right? Boiled them, and the hot dogs burnt, but because of I guess the gooky stuff they put in hot dogs, the best way I could explain it, it did set fire in the pot. So as much as like there isn't a flame like gas, the item inside the induction pot can catch fire. So you have to be careful with that. Sometimes the stove that has that shut off feature, or to put it on your stove, can be cost prohibitive. So what I've done instead is my oven has like a timer, and I can set like the temperature, the time, and alarms, and when to turn it off, like how much time to cook it. And then I set all that up, and I turn on the oven light, and I set reminders on my phone every 5 minutes to kind of look through the glass. But I find that baking now is my go-to because I can use the oven and set the time, the temperature, and how long to cook, which is helpful to me.
Yeah. I find I have a toaster oven now, and I love that it turns off on its own. So I have more comfort in that, having the turn off, like you say, Jen. Yeah.
Jordan,
yeah,
question for you on like toaster ovens and that. Do you recommend that they remain unplugged and only plugged in when you're going to use them?
I would recommend that there are outlets in your kitchen that are designed more so to be more water really safe, and also shut off if it detects something malfunctioning, but you never know, right?
Okay.
I would, anything that produces heat, I always, even that goes for like even hair dryers, especially, like unplug those space heaters, any heat producing appliance, particularly, I would leave unplugged. But also to answer, yeah, Lori's question earlier about induction stovetops, I think Jenny answered that kind of for me, where it's not usually, it's the contents in said pot that usually catch fire. So as long as it's heat producing and it's enough to produce a flame, then it's still potentially dangerous. But the setting the timers and having it shut off is great. It doesn't kind of void you from the need to be in the kitchen while you're doing it, or, you know, especially definitely not leave the building, but it gives extra safety there, right?
So I have 3 questions.
Yep,
That's okay.
of course.
These are my kitchen things, extinguishers. I have not 1 but 2.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you how to use them.
Okay.
So even when you read it, you know, but you know, in a fire, like that's not going to happen, right? But you know, so I wish there was a way where we could have a demo of how to use these without having to wait for number 1. But number 2, my other question is I forget. So I have this company come and do a tag for insurance purposes, which annoys me because it's $500 for them to just come and write that they inspected it. But I have to do it. But on the bottom, it says, and I think I learned this from you the last time, but the bottom, it says 2021. So I can't remember if that's the expiry or if that's when I bought it. And then when I look at this label here, that the company Control Fire Systems charges me $500 to come in for 2 minutes and check. It's hard to interpret what they have said. So I just buy another one. So I don't cook, and I now have 2, you know, things in my kitchen. I rarely cook as to be compliant, right? So my question is how do I understand again when the expiry is for these? And is there an opportunity in fire departments or whatever to learn how to use an extinguisher?
Okay, so with extinguishers, I'll talk about the expiry part first, in which it depends on the manufacturer, the type of extinguisher and everything. That's why it does need to, I think it's monthly, they come check that, right? And they'll tick off that, hey, in 2025, January, it looks good, February, March. I'm assuming that's what they're tagging, right? That right there, right?
Once a year.
Once a year, okay. And that's how you know if it's working, right? I would use it, they're doing it based off the manufacturer.
Yeah.
But that extinguisher, it is indeed, like they'll have different classification of extinguishers. So I'll kind of talk about that. If you're a home use one, I would just have an ABC.
Okay.
That's the class of fires it is useful for. So a class A fire is your normal combustibles. Anything laid to B is flammable liquids, and C means it could be used on anything electrical, right?
How do
If it'll say on that extinguisher what the classification is. It'll give a rating in terms of a number, but also say might be A, B, C, A, B, B, C. But if you're looking for the one, yeah, that's somewhere where it says A, B, and C.
Okay.
I think you're able to find that.
Not easy.
There is also another one, Class K extinguishers.
You see this says, we see in small print here.
So BC is useful for flammable liquids as well as electrical equipment. So I would say that one is not as versatile. And if you're, in a fire situation where you're not sure if you need to use extinguisher, I would stick with just the ABC, because you're not going to be looking for a BC and remember what the BC means. But if you have an ABC, you're kind of good to go.
Okay.
So make sure you're using the ABC one. For yourself, to if you want to take a look at what's going on, 2021 is pretty recent. I would say, again, it's based on the manufacturer, but it's after 5 years. You might be getting close to.
And is that what it is? So on the bottom, like, is that
it's
how
usually I think that's the date of manufacture, not the expiry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could take a look at the gauge. There will be an area with the pressure is in the green. That's how you know that's what they're looking at where they're coming to inspect it. They're looking at the date of manufacture, and they're looking if there's still pressure in there. And the reason these do expire is because there's a dry chemical in there. It's like white powdery substance. And after a while, it sits up to the bottom, it degrades, it clumps together, and might not work effectively when you do need it. Okay, so how to use it. I'll talk about how to use it when it comes to asking the firemen for demonstration. Again, it depends on your municipality. Usually there is a demonstration that the city will do, whether it's the fire prevention office. It's not something you'd usually be able to do walking up to a fire department station and, hey, can you show me how to use this? Maybe if you bring your own, they probably will show you, to be honest. So you can try it, but I can't give you a promise that you could bring in a fire extinguisher and they'll show you and give you a demo of how to use it, very likely. But for yourself, you can kind of remember the acronym PASS, PASS. Okay, so what that means is there is a pin inside of the handle. You kind of see it with a ring. The P stands for pull. The first thing you do is pull that pin out. That's what locks the handle from being able to press it. So pull the pin, aim where you want to aim at the fire, right? You have a rubber hose nozzle there. You're aiming at that with your left hand. Your right hand's holding onto the handle. And then you squeeze. That's what the first S is. And then as you squeeze, make sure you're sweeping side to side, which is the second S. So pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. That's how to use it, right? This is for small fires. So anything that happened in your kitchen, maybe a garbage can or something, small garbage can, that's what you're using your extinguisher for, right? Anything bigger than that, the extinguisher's not going to get you very far. It's best to leave. Leave, close the doors, call for help. Okay? You said you had a few more questions, Laura.
My other question is this. So this is.
Sorry, I'm unable to read that, but.
So this is. So it's Smart Flame. Smart Flame, cute little candle. Ethanol, sort of. Burner fuel.
Okay.
Burner fuel for indoor and outdoor use. Okay. So, follow so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was given a gift of a fire table for outside, a fire pit table.
Okay, it's like a bowl, a metal bowl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sort of, yes, metal, I guess, right? However, in my municipality, we are not allowed.
Yeah, no open burning.
Right. So as a result, I don't use it. However, I found these, and so I use these for the first time. I have 3 of these. So they're a can for everybody. They're a can of burner fuel. It says for indoor use and outdoor. I can't imagine, but anyway. So I put them inside. I sent Ellie a picture. I don't know how to load it up here. Ellen, I mean a picture. I don't know how to load it up here, but I set it inside where typically you would be able to put a real fire. I set the cans in there and I used them, and it was beautiful. But it still made me very nervous. So I want to feel comfortable using it. No, is it okay if I'm using it? I believe municipality wise, I can use these. But I found after it was, how do I turn it off? How do I dispose of the empty, carton? How do I container? How do I even know if it's empty? All of that. So any information around fire and smart flame. But I have to say, it was beautiful outside. I could not even imagine the scenario where you would use this inside. The flame is open. But anyway, just your thoughts or your
Yeah, my thoughts on that. If like it's something you are nervous to use, I wouldn't be using it, right? But when it comes to information on like getting more comfortable at how to use that, it should be written on there in terms of the use care, right? The manufacturer should write how it should be disposed of and also how it should be put out, which is usually through smothering it. But it sounds like you're using it as a supplement to like a bonfire, small campfire. Is that right? You're not using this to cook or anything like that? No?
pure ambience.
Okay, and you're using it outside?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I'd be very surprised if anyone gave you a hard time for using that outside. Technically, it is considered open air burning.
Right.
So I can't say that, like, I doubt you're gonna have neighbors calling you or you're gonna have the fire department show up for using smart flame. But if it is flame that you're using outside that is not covered up in some way with a grill and for cooking purposes, then it is technically not allowed.
Because you see these for like even these little tabletop flames and these,
I know.
right? So that's why I want to be mindful, but I do love mood, right? So, how do I just thought I would ask.
Yeah. Any other questions that you had? Because I know you wanted to talk about was there something else you mentioned, or was that cover it?
That covers it.
Okay.
I have a question or two. It's Ellie.
Sure. Go ahead, Ellie.
Hi, thank you so much. I'll ask quickly. I just saw the time, but my sound has been going in and out, so I apologize if you already said it or if you can't hear me. But I wonder what you thought about fire blankets versus extinguisher. Like if there's a quick thing in the kitchen, like I do have both, but like what would you grab first, kind of thing?
So what I will say is they're used for more or less the same scenarios, right? For small fires, I wouldn't say any, like, fire extinguishers are usually a little bit more reliable, right? Just because they've been tested and been around longer. So, however, they do make a big mess, and use case scenario of them is probably a little more complicated than using a blanket, right? So if you have anything, we'll go with the example of a pot on the stove, right? That caught on fire. A lot of people's go-to is just putting the lid on. Smother the fire, deprive it of oxygen, it'll go out. A blanket, you would use that. It's even easier to use than putting on a cover top, because your hands are covered when you're putting it on and it covers a larger surface area. So you could use a blanket in that scenario, or an extinguisher. One is not like cover different situations than the other for the most part when it comes to small fires in your home. But provincially, we're not, again, endorsing fire blankets just because they are relatively new, but every research says that they are shown to work pretty well, right, for small fires. And anything that you can cover and deprive it of oxygen for, it's great.
Okay, great. And I noticed that one of my fire extinguishers, my daughter actually had just asked like last week if she could test it, and then she looked at it and it actually said, I guess, that it was empty, like the lever when it was down. So does that happen over time, or did someone use it and I didn't know? And do you refill them or replace them?
It's possible. I've never seen it, to be honest, but it is possible. For whatever reason, it can be degrade over time, but usually the pressure remains relatively high. But for it to completely unpressurized, someone might have used that one, right? So that's why when you take a look at it, make sure it's still in the green, right? And if it's not, you're most likely gonna have to replace the whole thing, right? It's not something you refill, you're getting a new one. Yeah, you're disposing of that one and getting a new one.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because when you're using extinguisher, you might as well use the whole thing at that point, because once you open that up, it's you can't store it partially pressurized with the dry chemical low anyways. It won't be effective after that. So
Okay, great. And that past suggestion was great. I think maybe like I'll write it out and stick it onto the fire extinguisher so my kids see it too.
yeah, pin, aim, squeeze, sweep.
Perfect.
It would be
Thank
cool if, like, going into a department and seeing if they're willing to give a demo. They probably won't have one to use any of their own, but if you do have one, they can show you. And if you have no use for that BC extinguisher, for example, because I don't recommend using that white BC extinguisher. Yeah, in your home. Alrighty.
I think Jenny will take one. Jenny has a question, and then we'll end it there. Yeah.
Sure.
How do you just like? What's the right way to dispose of an old fire extinguisher?
There is the municipal hazardous waste that you can drop it off to, depending on the municipality. But there's also certain companies that take it. Certain fire departments will also take them and dispose of them for you. So it could be any of those options. Where I'm from, if people have an expired ones, we usually take them and drop them off to a company that comes and picks them up and replaces them.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you again, Jordan, for coming for a second time. I think we probably need a session that's just questions so that people can bring their safety questions.
Yeah, it gets very personal towards people's situations or
Yeah.
slight things they run into. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. All right. I think we can end it. I don't know if Madison is back. She had to step away.
Yes.
You're back. Okay, great.
I'll stop the recording right there.
Okay.